What's poppin', y'all? Adam22 decided to kick off a lot of controversy for the West Coast by going at one of the most beloved figures in hip-hop history, which is none other than Tupac. And he would say the following: Tupac lived in LA for less than a year. Anyone who calls him an LA rapper is out of their mind. This level of cap is an atrocity. And he would continue and say, Tupac lived in LA for 9 months. I've lived in LA for 17 years. I'm not from LA, but I have a way more plausible case than Pac does. And then he goes on to also show a video clip, which I don't need to play for you guys, of Pac from his own mouth saying that he's not going to claim LA. He learned the game from Oakland. So even though that he lives in LA, he's going to claim Oakland. And this takes, this is actually a multi-layered conversation. That's why I really love this. But first off, we're going to go with, is Pac from LA? Man, hell no, Pac's not from LA. Everybody knew Pac was from New York. And, well, not everybody knows. He's associated with the West Coast. He helped the West Coast brand go global. When you people think West Coast, yeah, throwing up the W's that people are responding to Adam22 with. Like, for instance, this comment that says, Pac only spent 1 year in LA, put out multiple West Coast anthems that has been unmatched till this day. Pac was only in LA for 1 year, but became the poster boy for all of California and had the world throwing up W fingers. Pac was only in LA for 1 year, but his legacy in the culture can still be seen and heard through music and fashion. I don't know about fashion or music because his sound is not really replicated. Adam spent 17 years in LA, and all he's done was let the hood hit his wife while he watched, so I guess that's pretty West Coast, because it ain't no fun if the homies can't get none. This is a funny comment. It's making some decent points, but the thing is, people don't have the same energy. Like, for example, if Chris Brown says he's from LA, right, and he's a blood, even though he moved to LA when he was, 15, 16, people are going to, or maybe even earlier, people are going to say, nah, he's from Virginia, but Chris Brown has, this guy's got put on. He's put a bunch of money into people that are involved in gangs in LA. He's represented it. He's made albums representing it. All of this other stuff. On top of that, you've also got Soulja Boy. Soulja Boy was from Mississippi, I think, originally. Or he was born in Atlanta, then went to live with his dad in Mississippi. Mississippi is where he made his early hits like Crank Dad. That's where he learned how to produce. His dad had a PC that he bought for him. And then he went to Atlanta. And then after that, he went to LA, where he talks about that whole Fruits thing. I think it's like some coalition. Let's just say that. Some gang in LA. So when he says, he's from Atlanta, people are like, man, you ain't from Atlanta, you from Mississippi. Or when he says he's from LA, they're like, nah, you're not from LA. Although they went to these places before Pac did. Pac was already grown. And this is another thing that Pac did. Pac, they have this whole gangsta image around Pac. Well, Pac was a theater kid. He joined a gang. If anything, he did what 6ix9ine did to a degree. Like, if you just look at it objectively, this guy saw a gang. He got up with them. He was doing business with them as well. Except in this case, Death Row, he was really getting active. And he didn't tell. And I don't know if Adam wants to believe this or he wants to buy into this, but Pac is just like, to a lot of people that are hip-hop fans, he's like a Jesus to them. And the reason why is, you cannot criticize, bring up any logical point or anything about Tupac and be met with anything but just illogical arguments, emotions, etc. Like, for example, let's say Jesus, right? Like, this is a religious figure, and that's why I'm comparing them, because people see Tupac as almost as Jesus-like figure. So if somebody says, well, do you think all those miracles actually happened? Or was, Jesus, maybe he was like one of the early magicians or illusionists, right? Like, for example, right now, if you took a Chris Angel, or hell, you took a David Blaine and you brought them back 2,000 years ago and they were doing the tricks that they're doing right now, which we know is not real magic, people would probably think, damn, this guy must be God, right? Now, I'm not saying that's actually what happened, but if you bring this up to somebody that subscribes to any Abrahamic faith, really, because they would all have to believe in Jesus, they're going to tell you that, well, not the Jewish faith. They're going to tell you, man, you're tripping. They're not even going to register the argument. They're not going to think about it. They're not going to consider it. Similar thing with Tupac. When you bring up Tupac, and this is the thing, people will bring up allegations When you bring up that Tupac, not only was he the theater kid, right? Not only was he like an emotional guy, not only was he a poet, but then he switches all of that up to go be a gangster. People, they don't want to hear it. They're like, nah, Pac is a gangster. He's a G. You know, he was riding. And I mean, he was getting busy. He was out there in Vegas. He was fighting. He was doing all of that. But then when you bring up, well, you know, Pac also is a convicted rapist. Yes, he's convicted. He went to prison for it. He served time for it. People just memory hole that. They don't even think of that. And if you bring that up, they're like, nah, man, you know, she lied, this and that. Even though that same woman was, I believe she was interviewed by Vlad TV. And even until now, she maintains that, yes, that's something that Tupac did to her. And we've seen people just get allegations that they just get allegations with no arrest, no police report, no nothing, and people get that label. Nowadays, rapper gets that label, and any other name that you can think of, they get that label. Yet, Pac, that just didn't happen. She lied, because they don't want to accept that this figure that they worship, Tupac, is even human. They see him as beyond human. And the funny thing is, too, if you look at the comments on Vlad's interviews with this woman that was the victim of Pac in that case, she is the one that gets hate. So she gets hate for having been a victim and he was found guilty in court. And this is something it's a crime that's very hard to prove. She gets hate because people are like, nah, you have to be lying because Pac is this mythical figure. Even though, keep in mind, the guy passed away, unfortunately, when he was 25 years old. So he was very, very, very young. And I think maybe it's because, I think with Pac and Biggie, people thought that they were older than they were because Biggie was Biggie even bald? I don't know. Biggie was obese, right? He was obese and he was a giant and he had a very deep voice. So people just saw him as like way older, especially if you didn't grow up or you weren't an adult while they were popping. And then Pac, he was bald, but he was also like a relatively smart guy. So people thought he was older too. But these guys died very, very young. So to think that they were, or not Biggie in this case, because people do have more criticisms of Biggie than they do of Pac. But Pac, like I've said, people were saying, oh, yo, if Pac is still alive today, they used to do this. They don't do this anymore. But they would be like, nah, they would be running the game. They were saying this in 2011 and 2012 when Rick Ross and Lil Wayne were killing it and Meek Mill, and they were calling them trash. Yes, people were calling these guys trash and saying, man, if Pac was here, he would be at best, hell, if he survived too, because he was involved in all that stuff, he would be Ice Cube. You could expect him to be an Ice Cube, and that's best case scenario, right? Like he was into the acting, he had his own businesses, his own companies, things in entertainment. Another figure like this is Mike Tyson. People just love Mike Tyson. I don't think people see Mike Tyson and worship him to the same degree that they do Pac, partially because I think Mike Tyson's still alive, and fortunately, we've seen him age, but he was convicted as well. Convicted of same crime as Pac. But people just memory hole that. They don't throw that label on Mike Tyson at all, and they just keep it pushing. Similar thing with Kobe, although haters of Kobe Bryant, they will throw that on Kobe, but Kobe was never convicted of the crime. The two other people that I was talking about, they were convicted of the crime. Actually, I think it was like a civil suit with Kobe, and he just settled. And a civil suit is way different than these guys that went to prison for the crime. So in Adam22's case, just bringing up this topic, you're not going to have a logical discussion. This is just one of the mythical figures. It's not even a Mount Rushmore. This is like, hell, you know, like Hindus, they have like a bunch of gods. This is one of them in hip hop. It's Tupac. You can't say anything bad. You've got to glaze him up and down, pause on that, or you're going to get nothing but hate. And people won't be able to explain why they're hating on you. They won't be able to explain why they feel the way they do about Pac, but they just do. And I don't know if they were indoctrinated into it. It's just one of those early things, I guess, that once you first get into hip hop, they're like, yo, Pac, Biggie. It's not even, they don't even give Nas the respect like that, even though they should. But I don't think we started even getting this argument or conversation. People weren't even willing to go back and forth with it until 6 years ago, around 2019, is when people first started bringing it up, and it was mostly about like Pac being not a studio gangster, but like him not having grown up like that, because there weren't all of these resources for information back then that we have right now, with people making videos, people interviewing all the people that were around him and in his life. Back then, it was just what was put in front of you, magazines, and when you saw that he was with Suge Knight, yeah, you bet your behind that they were not going to publish anything that, I wouldn't even call it disparaging, but that would harm the image that they wanted to put out there of Pac. Actually, as a matter of fact, also let me know any other figures that you think are just heralded as you cannot say a single bad thing about them. I really just think at this point, like, yeah, you could say stuff about Pac. I think they have to be dead. Some people will say Ye. Like, for instance, people will be critical about Ye. Well, I'm saying that I disagree with the Ye one. Ye can recover from anything, but Ye gets plenty of criticism, and people don't just glaze him. If anything, they'll use the music to justify behaviors that, or not justify, but to disregard behaviors that he exhibits. Whereas there are certain people that are just seen as infallible. In this case, Pac, like I said earlier. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. And I'm going to see y'all in the next one.